next keynote speaker is Ms. Dionne Kerr-Malherbe, CEO, SIA Consulting, South Africa. She is the founder and CEO of SIA Consulting, providing advisory services to both public and private sector clients on transformation, development, and strategy. Since leaving the banking industry in 1998, she actively worked on inward investment, economic development, social enterprise research, and activation. She is a thought leader and public speaker on social impact, diversity, people sustainability, and shared value. She has a strong portfolio of local and multinational private and public sector clients and has served on several executive committees. She served as a judge for several awards and was the chairperson of the National Association of BEE Consultants. And today she will be sharing her valuable insights on the topic trade facilitation and investment promotion. Over to you, Ms. Dionne.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm talking this morning very briefly about the issues of money, I guess, and specifically trade investment and promotion and how that links into the SDGs. And I think that for me, from an SMME ourselves, we also, as a business, develop more than 5,500 SMMEs at any given time through an online platform. We've worked extensively in SMME development, both in South Africa and across the African continent. So it's something that's very dear to me and I'm extremely passionate about. And at the end of the day, one of the misnomers that we have is that SMME development and social enterprise development is empirically important. Everybody says the right things about this side of the sector, but in reality, it's often looked at as charitable. If we take a look at the SDG investment and what's happening in that investment market, it's estimated that there's a gap of about $2.5 trillion US, and that was dated back to 2014. Since then, we saw post-COVID that the investment in SDG imperatives post-pandemic fell by 51% in Africa, as an example, 44% in Latin America, 33% in Asia. So that investment actually dropping. And one of the issues that we found is the ability for SMMEs who are far more agile and far more able to change to really maximize the money that needs to be and has now been committed to SDG investment. A shared value approach is a business approach adopted in the United States. They're estimating that corporate businesses in the United States are investing now around 12% of their GDP into shared value imperatives and seeing a remarkable return on their investment. Countries globally are struggling with the dynamic of having to say, how do we make sure that we prioritize social investment when we've got shrinking GDPs and or increasing levels of debt and or an increasing number of people that are unemployed and issues of climate change and how that's impacting the world over. The reality is that it's always going to be harder for corporate businesses to adapt and be agile, and small businesses can do that far more readily. So I'd like to just talk about some of the examples really that allow us to look at this notion of where SMMEs will be the catalyst for the future in respect of SDG investment and in respect of how corporate world interacts with our SMME market. In one of the mining communities that we work in, they had a significant issue where municipalities, particularly in South Africa, have to submit what is called an integrated development plan. And that plan suggests how they will make sure that each of the members of their communities and municipalities are taken care of. In one of the communities that we audited, the municipality told us that there was 29,000 households in the community we were auditing. The mine, who has responsibility for some level of social and infrastructure impact for their communities, told told us that those numbers were incorrect. There were more than 63,000 households. And we employed youth. We trained them. We provided them with tablets. We trained them on how to do surveys. And we made them go door to door across each and every household to understand the skills, to understand what industry, what businesses, the household income, and how that was operating. There were 212,000 households in that same community. So how do we possibly expect for governments and municipalities and structures of government to provide for all of their people, when in actual fact, the reality is that there's too much distance between the data and the global imperatives and the policy imperatives and in actual fact, what's happening on the ground. So projects such as collecting wet waste out of catering kitchens, for every mining house and large corporates collecting their wet waste and converting it into positive natural fertilizers, which can then go back into the agri-ecosystem. Some of them are converted into biodiesel for tractors, machinery, and equipment, and some are converted into fertilizers for plants and plant care. But in essence, what happens is that the cost of removing that wet waste is quite exorbitant. It has to be removed in a certain way. It has to be registered so that it doesn't go to landfill in terms of methane gas and emissions. And so it has to be paid to be removed by a registered company that charges quite excessively because it is a specialized service. By the community being able to take that wet waste and convert it into biodiesel and being able to convert it into fertilizer, the company pays the community instead of the large enterprise that used to do the waste collection. And the community converts that into a product which they can use to stimulate and develop their agricultural enterprises. So for the business involved, it's investment neutral. For the parties involved on a commercial level, it's investment neutral, but it completely ticks the boxes of SDGs. It absolutely addresses the issues of scope 3 emissions in respect of minimizing methane gas and minimizing what goes back into the environment. And more importantly, it allows that community to be able to use a circular economy model in order to generate an income and a livelihood. And I think for me, this is passionately where we need to look at our role as SMMEs in being able to create jobs, in being able to play meaningful roles on the ground, in converting our business ideas into circular economy activists where we can deliver projects on scale, on the ground, which nobody else can do. And I always say community solutions are not developed around a boardroom table. In the same way, SMME solutions need to be driven by the SMME market. And the access for funding has never been better. Traditional funding sources for small businesses is expensive. Usually it comes with heightened security expectations. It comes with heightened interest rates. Even the grant funding typically is insufficient in order to create longevity in SMME development. And so if we start to look at blended finance models, if we start to look at the opportunities that exist for us to be activists for SDG change as the SMME market, and we model our business models accordingly, then it's an entire layer of finance and funding that we make available in order to achieve these goals. Again, another example I'd like to use, and I'm sorry there's noise and lights going out as the power switches and comes in and out, but is the issue, pardon me, of mining closure. And I know that I've discussed mining twice. In fact, let me use another example. We had an FMCG company that works in health and hygiene. During COVID, what we did was we did some research around the trends in South African townships. Townships are informal settlements. Typically, individuals live in a shack dwelling environment, and around 32% of a single mother's income goes towards providing for health, childcare while she's at work. In addition to that, around 20% of her income is spent on transport to and from work. And so what we did was we developed a model where we created a 3D printing business within each of these households with a single mom. She was able to print educational toys and items so that moms can homeschool their children and be able to make sure that the early childhood development function is taken on by the mother. And they were able to be advocates for health and hygiene. They were trained in basic health care, first aid, and community counseling, and they were able to sell these products which were provided by the manufacturer of dental products in terms of health and hygiene. So they could create an income, they could take care of their children, they could be positive advocates for change, and very importantly, provide a better quality care for their children. The net income that was provided for these micro enterprises is 3 times what their net income was when they were working in the formal market. And over and above those issues, these ladies started to collect plastic waste and convert it into plates and bowls, which could very well and easily be set up. So it's really just for us to take a different look at SMME development. It's really for us to merge the interests of the SDGs around education, health, poverty alleviation, climate change, and obviously social justice and quality employment and dignity that exist for all of the human beings, and the opportunity that exists sits within that social development and the SMME market. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dionne.